Hey, and welcome back to VFX Tutors. I'm Josh, and in this tutorial we're going to be continuing with our Booble project. So we've done some sort of basic textures and we've exported them out from Substance, and we did load them in again, but now we're going to go through the look dev stage of it. So I'm just going to start off fresh and bring in the textures again, just so that all the look dev stuff's in the same place. And yeah, so we're going to get going on that. So I hope you've enjoying this series so far. I've been uploading a little bit more, so you're not waiting around for loads and loads. But yeah, don't forget that like and subscribe. It really does help, and I like to hear your feedback and stuff. So yeah, let's get going with the look dev. Okay, cool. So in our previous one, we did load in our textures quickly onto our things, but we'll just do it again just for the sake of the whole look dev part, having it all complete. So I've opened up my latest project. It's all nice and tidy, and I'm just gonna select anything that's got the metal on. And you can go to your hypershade up here and load them in manually, but we'll go into that afterwards. I'm just going to pull that off to the side. We'll just close it now. I just kind of like just to get it all. For me, it's easier just to go through the little side menu to do it. So I'm just going to go to my color. Sorry, I'll explain what. So because I'm just selecting that, it's not going to do it on, it's going to do it on all of the things that I've got the metal selected. So I've got it in my shader here. So I'm just going to go to my color. I'm going to click this little checker box, go to file, and I need to click on this little yellow folder. And I probably should have deleted those, but that's from some test renders that I did. The TX files, don't worry about those for now, but you won't have them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go down to my base color, and you can select any one. It doesn't have to be any particular one. Just make sure that you select the PNGs and select open. Then the next thing that you want to do is change your UV tiling mode to UDIM. And you can generate the preview. Sometimes this takes a little bit longer to load up, but now we've got our textures all in the correct UDIM spaces. It's looking a bit, maybe we forgot to actually add a color to that fill. And you can see how your textures are working, and they're all looking pretty good. So we're going to leave our color space, because we didn't do anything color space wise, and we're not going to do anything like that. We're going to keep it really simple. I don't want you to get confused to go into aces or anything like that, because that's like something you want more of a production sort of line thing. But we're just going to keep everything fairly standard. Cool. So I'm just going to click on, I'm going to go back through to my AI metal. And I can load in my metalness, but we'll just do it anyway. I'm pretty sure my metalness is just a flat. Oh no, it isn't. So we'll go to our metalness and click open, and we'll just do the same again. And we'll use our UDIM Mari. But we'll change this to raw. So any sort of grayscale maps, you kind of want to change it to raw. We can generate preview, but that won't do anything. And you see it's kind of gone a bit funny in the viewport. Let's not worry about that. And let's go to our specular roughness file, and we're just loading them in. We still have to reconnect these properly. So I'm just going to go to my roughness, any PNG. Let's go OK. UV tiling mode, UDIM Mari. And change this to raw as well. I'm just going to select back on here as well. Then our last thing that we do is go to geometry and bump mapping. And depending on what you're going to use, you can use, if you're using the bump map, you leave this as bump. But if you're using the normal map, you need to change this to tangent space normals. We don't have a huge bump map. It's not particularly detailed, it's barely anything, but I'm just going to use that. And then I'm just going to go to my height map. And you can see there's pretty much nothing in there. So if you actually have a look at our normal as well, got something there. It's barely anything in there. You can see them slight bit of details, but that'll be in the bump map as well. But I'm just gonna load in our bump and see how that goes, wherever it's gone. or height. Sorry. Okay. Udem. I'm going to change this to raw. And if you're using the normal, you'll also need to change it to raw. Cool. So now we've loaded in all our textures. And we can do a test render, but they won't be correct. It'll be a bit of a mess, because we still need to go to our hypershade and actually link these up a little bit better. So I've got my hypershade here, and I've got my AI metal, and you can middle mouse click it to hit into here. And if you select the open full tree, it should open up. And if you select it, or if you select that again, is it that one? Yeah, that one closes it. Sorry. And first thing I'll do is just organize it. So these are just basically all our things we've loaded in, all our sort of maps. And that's the only reason I like doing it that way, is because it's actually faster. It feels faster for me, so I don't have to make these separate nodes. Cool. So we've got our metalness, which is bringing the out alpha into one of our sort of other utility inputs. We've got our base color, which is going into our base color. This is going to be a really simple look dev. We're not doing anything super complicated. We're just going to set it up quickly and do a very quick render first. Then we'll get into more details. So the first thing that we probably want to change is our roughness. In fact, let's disconnect our metalness for now. I'd like to leave that a little bit last. Let's undo that and leave that there. Let's go to our roughness. And I want to change my input from R. So now you can see that the specular is working a little bit better in here now. And pretty much, let's just remove that and see what we get. No, I'll leave that on for now. Cool, so we've done that. And we've done nothing else apart from just reconnect the roughness, really. And what I'm going to do is we can create let's just create a dome light first, so it's not taking ages. You can create a 3-point lighting rig as well. We might do that, but I'm just going to select here, go to my file, and you should have this HDRI. And I use this quite often for a bit of look dev, because I've graded in this. I've graded the sun, so I don't have to add a key light in. And that should change to raw. And now we can do our first sort of preview render. So I'm just going to go to Arnold Renderer. I'm going to select the framing, just see what our resolution is. And I'm not expecting this to come out very pretty. So the first time you do this, it will come up with converting the TX files, and that's fine. That's just converting it to its color space management. So it might take a little bit of time at first. But hopefully it should go through, and it will be doing the TX. And we can see now it's rendered out. We're looking very, very metallic-y. Probably a little bit too metallic, sort of. I'm pulling that round, expecting that to move, but let's organize this in a way we can see it a bit easier. Cool, so we've got our first sort of basic render. And it seems to be working pretty well. Got some funny black streaks coming up here. Let's investigate where that's coming from. That could just be from the environment, but I wouldn't have. I'm just going to pause that for now. Yeah. So, obviously our metalness, our key thing here, we've got our metalness. It's looking a bit too neon, or almost. And if you don't want the background on, it can get quite annoying sometimes seeing it. It's up to you. I prefer to work without it. But you can go to select your HDRI, go to camera and press 0. So now if you press play, it should update it, and you don't get the background. So I'm just going to bring back my hyper shade. Just going to select this. Oh, and we've jumbled it up again, sorry. We could tidy it up afterwards. Cool, we've got our out alpha coming in here. So because our entire is kind of working off the map, I'm trying to think if we really want to use it. What we can do is usually I actually would just remove it and do it manually in the thing, but I'm not sure if I can actually do this. Oh, sorry, out color. Metalness. This is going to allow us to sort of remap metalness values. I'm not actually sure if this actually does work on the metalness because it's working as an alpha. So I'm just going to remove it and see what it looks like. I'm going to render, update full scene. Cool. Because it's kind of a metallic paint, we're not we kind of want the metalness. Imagine like trying to think of the word for it now. So you have metal, then you have rust, which is it's a slightly different type of material. When you hit rust, it's I've completely forgotten what it's called. But yeah, now we're starting to get a bit more back to sort of painted-y, plasticky sort of look, and you can bring this up, and it's all down to taste, really. But like, you can see how we're bringing in this sort of metalness, and it's doing nice things, but it's not what we want, really. I kind of want it to look a bit more painted-y, and like, obviously if it's painted, it's gonna be pretty close to sort of non-metalness, but sometimes I can see in their renders they have added some. Cool, so I'm just going to zoom out and have a little look. I think that's looking all right, actually. So the next thing that I kind of want to do is just have a look at this, how this specular is reacting. Because I think it's in... Yeah, so we look at how the specular is reacting here, and this is all the sort of like look dev stuff. We're going to do very briefly over it. We're not going into like, because look dev can be extremely complex, and this is probably the absolute basics. But you can sort of see here, it depends on how you want. But my plan was to have these bits currently the sort of matter areas where it's a little bit dirty, and this sort of the cleaner areas. So it's kind of backwards. So what I want to do is go to... I'm going to go to my roughness. Just bring a base color up here. And I'm just going to press tab and go to remap value. And for a lot of this, we're just going to bring our out color R and out value to specular roughness. And you'll notice nothing will change, because at the moment we need to what we can do is play with this sort of value here. And I'm not sure if my computer is good enough to have it update in the viewport, but I probably should have turned that off first. Sorry. So I'm just going to select region render here, so it's not rendering everything. So now I can just select, and you can see it makes a sort of a key or a vertice in there. If I just pull this all the way up to the top left, you can see now, in fact, let's undo that. Let's just render this quickly. Just so, like, what's really useful is to have snapshots. So I've just clicked on this little camera, and that's going to give us a snapshot of what we don't want. So I'm just going to click off the eye. Then I'm just going to go back to my value on my remap. I'm just going to drag this all the way up here. Press render, and then we can see what's happening. This is just purely to show you the extremes of changing it. So I'm just going to pull it around until I get a right sort of a relatively correct result. And this is how you can sort of play with your maps as well. Cool. So now if we compare the two, we're getting something more that we want here, but not quite enough. So it's kind of quite matte round here. So let's just keep playing around with this. We might have to do our input and output ranges. So if we, it's quite tight to try and squeeze this all on one. So you can go to our input and output ranges. And if you wanted to invert it, you would just flip these around the other way, but then you'd have to sort of undo your edits in here. And you kind of don't get what you want either. So you want to try and keep this, because this is how we have sort of created the texture. Let's just see what we can get with just playing with the value curve. And you can click on this and it will make it larger. So if I bring it that way, so probably the best way to do it. So if I bring this up, you can sort of see it's going the other way now. And if I bring this left, it's kind of reducing the fall off the specular. So if I bring this up and all the way right, we should start to get a bit more spec in the areas that we want. It's still not quite giving us what we want. Just might be pushing a little bit too extreme. Just going to change my input and output. I'm just going to see what results get if I flip that round. So effectively what we have is just kind of inverted it. But we can bring this back up. Let's also check that. Yeah, it's fine. So let's actually zoom out a bit and let's just get a full idea of what the head's actually doing. Sorry, it's a bit of a mess. Cool, so we're getting something close, but we're looking way, way too sort of matte. So let's go through and work on this a little bit more. Maybe let's even bring our metalness up a tad. And we definitely want to bring back some of this shine, so you can spend quite a long time sort of adjusting this. See what's going on here, and you can see like once it's finally gone through, it's actually looking pretty nice. Let's just move this around, see if we can get cool. So it might have just been our not a particularly great angle to undo that. No, can't. Whoops. Might have been a not a particularly great angle to check on. Cool. I feel we can still push this a little bit more. Like a lot of, see, we're looking very a bit too matte, I feel. It's working nice and it's kind of not doing what I really want. Let's actually try and let's go back and actually invert this and have a look. Okay, I think that's probably what we want, something a bit more. And you can see how I'm just like moving this around, and sometimes you might get different results. It's all really doing taste, really. I want to try and get this as close as I can to the actual reference, so I need to try and get this as glossy, the sort of specular bits, as shiny as I can. You can add multiple points in there as well. So you can experiment with different curves. I'm really going for a as close sort of painted metal looks. I think the one kind of looks a little bit, I don't want it to look plasticky. So what I will also do is actually select the whole thing, press 3, and turn the subdivisions on. I'll get rid of the faceting around there. And you can probably see that our bump is so minor, you can barely even notice it. But let's have a little zoom out. Let's close that down. I'm just going to pull this off to the side. Let's sort of get a full view, see what's going on. So I don't want to spend a huge amount of time on this, but I feel we're definitely getting there. It's a little bit too matte for my liking. Let's try and get some of this spec up. Let's reduce. I'll have to go to the input max and change that. Cool. So I think going with something like that's probably pretty decent. We don't want to go too overboard with it, and it's kind of working for what we need. We can go to our bump, but I don't think our bump's doing a huge amount. It's so minimal, you probably won't even notice it, but it'll be there somewhere, just enough. The really important thing is about keeping it very subtle. So now the next thing that I'm going to do, I'm just going to leave this for now, and now I'm going to select my AI rubber, and I'm going to do the same thing. Just going to go to color, file, click on the yellow file, go to my textures, substance textures, and I'm just going to go to base color. It doesn't matter which one. That's pure grey because that's our emissive one. And if we go to Udemy Mari, that will load it in. We can generate a preview there. Let's go back, go to our specular roughness, file, and do the same again, the roughness PNG. Change this to raw. And Udemy Mari. We don't have any metalness, so all we need to do is go to our geometry bump mapping, file, we'll leave it as bump, and height. And you'll probably notice a bit more if we had a quite a dramatic bump map, but we don't. Ours is just super. We haven't put loads of damage and dents in this. Cool, so I'm just going to go back to my hypershade. I'm going to select my AI rubber and just open that up. And all I'm really going to do on this one is actually just disconnect this and reconnect my R to my specular roughness. So I'm just going to pull this over and I'm just going to have a look at what it looks like. Let's update the render view. Doesn't look quite right. It looks let's have a look at what's going on here. Doesn't look, looks a bit too dark, light, sorry. Why is that so light? Roughness. So what we can do, we can just, I think that's a little bit too, it's rubbery, but it's looking very light. I don't know why that's looking very white, but we can add a remap hue saturation value. And all we'll do is just reconnect this up. And if we bring our value down, you can sort of see we can bring it that much darker. I don't know why it's when I did a little test, it didn't come out. Didn't come out that dark, but there we are, kind of in the right place, I feel. We got some nice roughness on there and it's looking very, very rubbery. So I'm not actually going to do much more of that. That's pretty much it. I've just added a remap hue saturation value on it. And I'm going to leave that as it is. I'm just going to pull this over here. I'm going to just do the whole thing and just have a look as a render. It's looking pretty decent. Like at this stage, like the look dev is really important. It's, you really want to define how all your maps are really working. Even though in the textures we sort of got it pretty good, but you want to really define what you want. So it's crucial that you get it right at the look dev stage, because once you've done all that, artists are going to be bringing this into the shots, and yeah, they're going to use that. They're not going to be they shouldn't really be adjusting them on the sort of shot by shot basis, because it makes it a little bit more difficult to control, but it does happen. But yeah, so we're almost done. So the next thing I'm just going to do, I'm just going to go to these eye sockets. I'm going to add a new material, Arnold AI standard surface, and I'm just going to change this to pure black, turn my specular off, and diffuse roughness all the way up. So now when I select face, it's kind of going to almost give us almost a little black hole. It's going to suck all the sort of light, or let you know it's not reflective. Cool. So now what we want to do is, if we go to these eyes, we're going to make some mesh lights. So the mesh light will always copy what it sees in its lowest subdivision, so we actually have to add a mesh smooth onto it, and we can edit this anytime. Cool. I'm just going to delete the history off that and that. So now if I select this eye, I can go to Arnold Lights Mesh Light, and that will hide the geometry. And now what we have here is this sort of red bounding box, which is actually a mesh light. So I'm just going to go into my color, and I think last time I just selected up here and brought it down smudge, but it's kind of in there. And I'm going to change my exposure to 5, and then make sure my light is visible. For now, I'm just going to turn my samples up to 4. It's quite high. Yeah, and now I'm going to do the same to the other one. Arnold lights, mesh light, change this to 5, color, and I'm just going to reuse the one that I've just selected. Samples 4, and light visible. So now if I do a render, we've got lights in our eyes. And obviously we probably want to add some glow in post in the comp for this, but and you can play around with that. So as for like the basic look dev and lighting goes, I think we're pretty much done. You can obviously go through and sort of be quite picky with it, because I just rushed through this for the tutorial, and I'll probably just like refine some bits as well to get a bit more shine out of this. But yeah, and if it helps, you can actually go up to your render settings up here, and you can add some AOVs to help sort of figure out what's going on. So we'll add these later on when we do rendering, but mostly I'll use specular for sort of look dev, and I can just render update full scene. What are we on? We're on 35 minutes. Unless it's taken ages. It shouldn't have been. And we can go on specular. And now we can see how our actual specular roughness is working. So it kind of looks pretty cool. And you can see it's keeping all these sort of stained areas fairly clean. Non-spec. Cool, so yeah, we're pretty much done. So have a play of that. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. I know it's not been quick, but I do talk a lot, and probably shouldn't. We can just go through and just do it. But yeah, don't forget that like and subscribe. It really does help. Put your comments in the comments section if you're liking it or not. Or yeah, it would be great to see how far you guys are getting. So yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one, which will probably be rigging, I guess, because now we've rigged the character. I still haven't gone out and filmed anything yet, so I need to do that. So yeah, we'll probably rig it next. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.